It's a beautiful day in this neighborhood, a beautiful day for a neighbor. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? It's a neighborly day in this beauty wood, a neighborly day for a beauty. Would you be mine? Could you be mine? I have always wanted to have a neighbor just like you. I've always wanted to live in a neighborhood with you. So let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would you be mine? Could you be mine? Won't you be my neighbor? Won't you please? Won't you please? Please won't you be my neighbor?
How's it going, neighbors? My name is Paul. I'm one of the teaching pastors here. Some of you have no idea what's going on right now. You're like, why is this guy changing his clothes right now? You had to take your shoes off? You couldn't have done that earlier? If this is your first time here, or your first time watching, this is just how we start every week. I'm going to tell you. No, this is the theme song for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, for those of you who are 11 and don't know. And this is how Mr. Rogers started every show. And so I tell you, to prepare for today, I have watched that intro so many times. I've been singing it all week. I have been method acting as Mr. Rogers all week long. It's been super annoying for anyone who's had to be around me. I apologize to all of you. And I actually saw the documentary about Mr. Rogers yesterday. It was called "Won't You Be My Neighbor?" And it's so cool. It's so interesting. And in that documentary, he says this: love is at the root of everything. Love or the lack of it. Love is at the root of everything, love or the lack of it, which is so fitting because we've been in a series called This Is Love, and we've been asking, what is love, and what does it look like, and why does it matter? And according to Jesus himself, love is the greatest thing that we can do. And take a look at this. He says this: love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And he says the second one is like it: love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So love God and love your neighbor as yourself. Everything's boiled down to those two ideas. And so this month, we have given to our community, and we've served in and around our community. We're sponsoring children who are in poverty in other countries. You still have a chance to do that. And today we're going to put an exclamation point on this series, and we're going to explore what love looks like for you on an everyday basis, and how it can and should change the way that you see and do everything. Now, not everybody here knows this, but I actually started out at Epic as the worship pastor. And so that was my role here for a really long time. And trust me, it has worked out best for everybody that I'm not doing that anymore. So if you've had the chance to meet or see or hear Ron or Coop, you know that they're crushing it. If you were here while I was the worship guy, then you really know that they're crushing it. And I have to tell you, it's a miracle that I ever even became a worship leader in the first place. When I was in high school, I got to lead worship for what I called Big Church. And so this is a promotion for me. So instead of just leading worship for a youth group, they let me take over on Sunday morning, which I call Big Church, and be the guy. So it's a big day for me. It was a lot of pressure. And long story short, it was an absolute train wreck. Now, here's what happened. I was leading from the keyboard, and I didn't know, and I played the whole set, all the songs, like 20 plus minutes like this. I played the entire set. I didn't know that my keyboard was transposed up 2 keys. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means, it means that I was playing in the wrong key the entire time, and I was playing 2 keys higher. So rather than singing a note here, I was singing it here. And I have to tell you, I went through that whole set, and I thought that I had hit puberty 2.0. I'm like, what is going on? It was a nightmare, and I didn't find out what I did until after I was done, and I wanted to die. Now, the craziest thing about that whole morning was that the whole time I was playing the right keys. I was playing the right notes, but I was in the wrong key. I was singing to the, tuned to the wrong key, and so everything was off. And it made all the difference. So I'm going to kind of show you how this works. So I brought a guitar along here with me. Just fair warning, I can't play the guitar very well either, but I can play it well enough to just play a few chords. And so that's what I'm going to do for you. Just play a few simple chords for you. And you know, it's just something simple like this. Sounds okay, right? Not bad? All right, you do not clap for that. You do not need to clap for that. And now here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take some of these strings now, and I am going to just knock them out of tune just a little bit, each and every one of these ones. And watch what happens. I'm going to play the exact same chords, the exact same notes, okay? Should I keep going? Yes? Yeah, it doesn't sound good, does it? And so this interesting thing happens where even though the second time I'm playing all of the right notes, like I'm doing the right thing, it was coming out all wrong because I'm out of tune. And so, and if you play an instrument like this, you have to constantly tweak to make sure that you're in tune. And I think this is something that's true of us in life as well. And so you might be hitting all of the right notes, at least as far as what people expect of you or what everyone seems to think is the path, right? So you have a job, you have a house, you pay the bills, you don't murder anybody, you're generally not a maniac. But even still, if you're out of tune, you might not be playing the song that you hoped you would be playing. And what's coming out is off. And this happens especially when we believe that we're right, and we can get this caught in our heads. We think we're right, and we think we're right, and we think that we're right, and we think we're right, but we're coming out all wrong. So what do we tune ourselves to then? Or how do you know if you're in tune? Now, Jesus says, and he says it pretty clearly, that everything boils down to loving God and loving your neighbor as yourself. Mr. Rogers said that love is at the root of everything. And the Apostle Paul chimes in on this too in the book of Galatians in the New Testament of Scripture. Let's take a look. He says, the only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. The only thing that counts is faith expressed through love. And that's pretty clear language, folks. So he could have written that there were 3 things that count. He could have written there were 2 things. He could have written there were 5 things that count. And he actually gets a little bit close. I'll share this from 1 Corinthians. He says, and now these 3 remain, faith, hope, and love. So if you're actually wondering what matters the most in life, we have a top 3 here. And so this should be on your list. What matters the most? Faith, hope, and love. But he says, but the greatest of these is love. The most important one, the one that matters in the end, is love. So what's all this other stuff that I've been doing? So if you hear nothing else today, I hope that you hear this. If anything matters, if anything is going to count in the end, it's what? Just yell it out. Love, right? It's love. So if that isn't my true north, if love isn't my top priority, if love isn't the lens through which I filter everything, then I am out of tune. And I do think that we get out of tune from time to time. And I think that we can get distracted or sidetracked or knocked off course a little bit. I think sometimes we believe what other people tell us about what's most important in life, and it's kind of like getting bad directions from someone who doesn't know where they're going. There are times when love takes a back seat to something else in my life. And so I want to go back to 1 Corinthians 13 because Paul writes this. This is known as the love chapter. And he says something really, really interesting about what we do and the relationship with love. So he says, if I speak in the tongues of men or even of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. So basically, I'm just making noise. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, but don't have love, I am nothing. If I have faith that can move mountains, but don't have love, I'm nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I might boast, but don't have love, I gain nothing. And so if you've never really thought about this before, here's what is so mind-blowing and interesting and fascinating about this passage. Paul is saying that it is possible to do incredible things, miraculous things even, and to do them without love. So if it's possible, I just want to have you think about this. If it's possible to speak in the language of angels, okay, I don't even know how you do that. That's like the top secret premium level of Rosetta Stone. I don't have money for that. So if it's possible to do that, and if it's possible to give away everything you have without love, and Paul's saying it's possible, then it's definitely possible for me to find myself in a position where I might be doing certain things, I might be doing everything without love. That's possible. And I think there are people who can work themselves to the bone, and this is kind of the way some of this stuff works out. There are people who can work themselves to the bone to provide for their family with money, but aren't giving their family what they actually need, like their presence, like their support, like their care, like their love. There are people who can show up and do the right thing, but do it without any care or attention to detail. They're just doing it because that's the thing that they're supposed to do. So it is possible for me to get so caught up in my job or what things look like or what they should look like to everybody else that I forget why I should be doing it in the first place. And I think sometimes we get really obsessed with the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? You've thought about this, right? You've thought about this. What do you want to be when you grow up? When you meet someone new, you're at a party or a get-together, what's the go-to question? Right. What do you do? What do you do? And we define ourselves this way, and I think we agonize over this question of what we should be or what we should do with our lives, and it has to be like a very specific picture. Some of us were agonizing about this from the time we were little kids, and then some of us are still agonizing about it as adults. Should I be a doctor? Should I be an engineer? Should I be a teacher? Or maybe you know what you want to be, but you can't seem to get there. Maybe you want to be a mom or you want to be a dad, and that's not possible right now. Maybe you wanted to get into a certain career, but something about your qualifications or your circumstances just has you in limbo, and you're in agony about it. But God is less interested in your job or in your career or in your title or what you put on your resume or what you tell other people that you do. Bob Goff, he wrote a book called Love Does, and he has a new one called Everybody Always. And he says this, that God sees who we're becoming, and he wants us to become doctors. That's actually what my mom still says to me. And then she says, okay, I get you're a teacher. Can you at least be a principal? That way you make more money. That's my mom. But God sees who we're becoming, and he wants us to become love. Do you hear that? God sees who you're becoming. Like, he doesn't see you right now. He doesn't see who you were 10 years ago. He actually sees you for who you're becoming, and he's inviting you into that. He's inviting you to step into that. He's like pulling you into that. And who we are becoming is this. You are becoming love. You are becoming a person of love. And so if you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, and if you've been hoping that like a certain job or career would just drop from the heavens into your lap, it's okay. Figure out what it means to love more and more each day, and you have taken care of the only thing that counts. Now, maybe you have no idea what it looks like to become love, or how to be in tune with love, or how to make sure that it's the only thing that counts, and I get that. I'll tell you this, that I am terrible at Christmas. I'm terrible at Christmas. And what I mean by that is that I want to give everyone I know just awesome gifts and find some great way to show them that I love them, because that's what Amazon tells me that I need to do, starting in October, along with every other store on the planet. But when Christmas approaches, I get so overwhelmed by it, and there are so many people, it's like my circuit board gets fried, and I don't know what to do, and so, you know what, I end up just getting everybody a gift card. I am the very worst Oprah. You get a moderately priced gift card, and you get a moderately priced gift card, and you get a moderately priced gift card. Not very exciting stuff. But you know what I'm much better at? When it's not Christmas, when it's not a holiday, it's just a Tuesday. And I think of someone and I go, you know what? I have an idea that I think can make them smile this week. When it's a Wednesday and I find out that a friend has a hard time with something, and I can say, I can help them out with that. I'm much better at that. I'm terrible at Christmas, but I'm much better at that. So, for a lot of us, we need to just kind of maybe start there. You're not going to become Mr. Rogers overnight. It takes more than a cardigan to do that. But what's something you can do is to show someone love, even if it's not their birthday, even if it's just Monday, even if it's something small. Maybe all it takes is you saying to someone, hey, how are you doing? Like really, how are you doing? And meaning it. And there are so many people, you'd be shocked, there are so many people who are going through things, even people you think are doing great, even people that you think you know really well and you see all the time, and you just need to give them a chance, just to crack the door open every once in a while and to say, how are you doing? And you would be shocked. Maybe they felt like they couldn't talk about it, but now you've given them permission to. There will be people who will feel loved because you have done that. I'll give away a little one of my trade secrets here. I actually think helping people move, I get really excited when people ask me to help them move. It stinks. Helping people move is terrible. It's the worst. But here's what I've found out. There is no better way to show someone you love them than to show up and help them move. All right, they're in such a bad way, right? You're seeing the worst of people, just all their stuff rearranged. They're discombobulated, and for you to show up, I know anyone who's ever shown up to help me move, I'm like, yeah, I'll give you anything you want. You have my love and devotion for the rest of my life, and maybe that's the way that you can help them to love them. And sometimes love just looks like listening to what people are just telling you about what they need or what they don't need. Do you know what the enemy of teachers is everywhere? Not children. Well, I don't know. Maybe some teachers. I don't know. I'm not judging. The enemy of teachers everywhere is glitter. Glitter. If there are any teachers in the room, you know what I'm talking about, all right? A kid gives me something with glitter on it, now my whole life is covered in glitter. Okay, it wasn't just this little card, now my dogs have glitter on them. I don't know how this happened. So I tell my kids, don't you dare turn anything in that has glitter on it. All right, I teach middle school, 7th and 8th grade. If you give me something that has glitter on it, I'm throwing it straight in the trash. I'm not even kidding. I will put it, I'm not even reading it. It's going in the garbage. And I think sometimes, people have been telling you what they need and they have been telling you what they don't need, but you've been giving them glitter anyway. Sometimes just to love someone means to just listen for the first time in your life, maybe. Just listen. Love isn't always just these extravagant gestures. Love is in the details. Love is in the small things. Love is seeing someone as your neighbor and letting them know you care. Later in 1 Corinthians chapter 13, look at what the Apostle Paul writes. He says, love is patient and kind. And I love this because this just sets up the stage, these specifics. These first two are amazing. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It doesn't brag. Another translation said it's not puffed up, right? You don't think of yourself as better than anybody else. It's not arrogant. It's not rude. It does not insist on its own way. Another translation says it does not demand its own way. It's not self-seeking is another way that it said. It's not irritable. It also said it's not easily provoked. How many of us are easily provoked? And also we don't provoke other people, or resentful. Another translation says it keeps no record of wrongs. And I'll say this, for some of you guys who are married, maybe the number one thing that you can do in order to love your spouse and to actually have a loving marriage and relationship is to stop keeping score. So if you are someone who kind of counts, I've done this thing this many times and you've only done it twice, that is a number one recipe for resentment, keeping score. So maybe some of us just need to wipe the scoreboard clean today. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing. I would say it doesn't cheer on when we see something wrong happening, even if it's happening to an enemy of ours, but rejoices with the truth, or it cheers on the truth. It encourages truth to come out. And so this passage gives us a pretty specific list of what love looks like. Honestly, I could go over this for hours and hours. But for any of us who want to take love seriously, who want to become love, who want to practice love, who want to be in tune with love, we can use this list both as a report card, like how am I doing at loving in these ways, and as a blueprint, how can I start to love better if I'm interested in loving better? And so I'm going to give you a few thoughts on a little bit on just a couple of things in this list, and I hope they're helpful. But what you're ultimately going to want to do is to think through and to consider what you can do, whether it's this list or beyond, to become love for the people around you. And so as I'm actually going to leave this list up here today, and I hope that as we go, it just inspires ideas for you. And it's not a complete list. It doesn't cover everything about love, but it's a really great starting point. And so I'm going to stream this list a little bit. And so again, here are the descriptions. Love's patient, kind, doesn't envy, doesn't boast, doesn't brag, isn't arrogant, it's not rude, it's not self-seeking, doesn't demand its own way, it doesn't provoke, it's not resentful, it doesn't keep score, it doesn't cheer on wrongdoing. It encourages truth. And when I look at this list, I look at just like patience and kindness. A lot of us could stop there. Those are probably the two most important words on that list. And patience especially. Now, I really do believe this. Patience is the key that can unlock a whole lot of doors for you if you're interested in loving people well. Like, patience is the key that unlocks the door to opportunities to love that you might not have had before. You know, Bob Goff, who I mentioned before, and he's totally awesome, he uses this phrase, and it's been so helpful for me, so I'm gonna just steal it from him. And he says this: you need to have immense patience. Immense patience. The people who understand that God has been immensely patient with them will begin to show immense patience for those around them. So, like I said before, I teach 7th and 8th graders. It's my full-time job. And there are times when a kid will say something, and it's like exactly the thing that pushes my buttons from 0 to nuclear in 1 second. Do you know what I mean? Anyone ever say that kind of thing to you? You know someone in your life who knows how to push that button. You know, to be honest, you know, regardless of what you see in the news, I'm worried about the people who have my nuclear codes. You know what I mean? Like, there are people in my life who have my nuclear codes. And so I have learned to pray for patience and pray for patience and pray for patience. And the thing is, kids need immense patience. Do you know how I know that? Because I needed immense patience when I was a kid. I was such a pain in the butt. Are you kidding me? I was such a pain in the butt. And it's not just one little moment where I needed patience. I needed immense patience for years. And years and years. Do you know how much of my parents' advice I ignored again and again for years and for years? And, you know, some of their advice I'm just now starting to get. And, you know, immense patience remembers that we're all a work in progress and we're in this for the long haul. Now, I know this. I owe so much to the people in my life who have shown me immense patience. And so we owe it to the people in our lives to pray for patience. Pray for it all day, every day. Repeat it to yourself. Write it down on 1,000,000 Post-it notes if you have to. Put one in every single place that you think your patience is going to be tested. Some of you guys, you're going to have a Post-it note on literally everything you own. You know, for me, even that phrase, immense patience, has been helpful because I just repeat it to myself again and again and again. I get into a situation, I'm just like, dude, immense patience, immense patience, immense patience. We owe it to the people in our lives to be patient with them. Now, what about strangers or the people you don't know as well, or as I'm going to call them, your future neighbors? Now, one thing that your future neighbors need from you, patience. Okay, I was at a Chipotle a few years ago. And it was nowhere near here. And I was behind this couple who was taking a while to decide what they wanted, and like kind of annoyingly long time to decide what they wanted. And I actually could tell that they had never been here before and things like that. And to be honest, I was in a hurry, so I was trying to get through this. And I'm like, oh man, okay. But you know, I told myself, you know what? Listen, it's just a burrito bowl. You'll be fine. Just be calm. It's okay. And so they finally ordered, and then I finally got to order. And when I got my food, I noticed that the couple was looking right at me, and like not just like glancing at me, they're like looking right at me. And I'm like, what's their deal, right? And the husband comes up to me and he's like, hey, you're a pastor at Epic, right? And I was like, oh! It turns out, not only, and here's the thing, this crazy thing, not only did they go to Epic and they knew who I was, but earlier that day, then this is what they told me here in that Chipotle, earlier that day, their son had been arrested. And both of them were just completely out of sorts. Their whole world was upside down, and they were a wreck. And can you imagine Like if I had just given them the stink eye because they were taking too long to order a burrito, if I was just like, can you imagine what that would have been like? And I'm like, that guy sucks, and he's my pastor. Oh man, don't treat people like they're just inconveniences in your life. When someone's standing in your way at a restaurant or is blocking the crosswalk or is sitting at the green light for like 3 seconds longer than you want them to, pray for patience. Pray for perspective. And actually, I believe that patience will give you perspective. If you just wait, if you literally just wait, you will get the perspective that you were waiting for. I've seen people lose their minds because someone made them wait for 3 seconds. It's insane. It's insane. So you know what? You can see people as inconveniences. That's an option. You can do that. I'm saying you should change the story a little bit. And I would actually say this, that people haven't been put in your path to inconvenience you. They've been put there as an opportunity for you to learn about love. So practice patience, and I will say when you begin to do this, you will see what I mean when I say that patience is the key to unlock a lot of opportunities to love. Because when you are patient, you have the like if I had been impatient with that couple at Chipotle, I never would have found out what their family was going through that day. Do you know what I mean? Like, and this happens to me, and I'm not saying I'm not perfect. Trust me on this. I messed this up 100 times. But man, we need to practice patience. This is what people need from us, all right? So don't see them as inconveniences. See them for how God sees them. The same way that he sees you as becoming love. Let's get that list back up here. The patience, kindness, doesn't envy, doesn't boast. Now, I want you to think about this list. In particular, what about the people who are hard to love? So put another way, these are the people who annoy the bejesus out of you. These are the people you can't stand, the people who are weird, right? The people who are just hard to love. So Jesus says this, what credit is it to you to love someone who's easy to love? Like what credit is that to you to love someone who's easy to love? So if you really want to love, you have to love your enemies. And as we went over in the parable of the Good Samaritan last time, Jesus extended the definition of neighbor to even the people you might despise. So these people that you can't stand are your neighbors, or maybe if you're not there yet, they're your future neighbors. So how do we love our future neighbors better? This might be as timely as ever because every time I go on the internet, I see people treating each other in the opposite way that this list describes. Especially online, especially on social media, especially with people that we don't like or that we don't agree with, especially our enemies. And I will say this, our enemies don't need the worst of us. Our enemies need our love. And this is something that's true for you, even if you don't believe in God, even if you are not a Christian, you will find this to be true, that your enemies don't need the worst of you. Your enemies need your love. And I'll speak for myself here. No one has ever debated me into becoming love or into becoming who God wants me to be. No one has ever just relentlessly been a jerk to me or reminded me how stupid I was, and then I go, oh, hey, thanks for wearing me down. Now I want to be just like you. No one has ever done that, never. Maybe it's worked for you, but I know it's never worked for me, and I know that I've never seen it work with anyone else. Now, if someone being rude hasn't made me better, if someone using shame hasn't made me better, if someone name calling hasn't made me better, if someone with just an ooh in your face attitude hasn't made me better, if someone being passive aggressive has never made me better, then I can't possibly delude myself into thinking that it's going to work for someone else. And what do we usually reserve for our enemies? The worst of us, right? The worst of ourselves. We give them our pettiness, and we give them our cruelty. We give them our viciousness. We give them our worst. And what do you expect that to do? That only ever inspires the worst in someone else. So it's never going to work to treat our enemies badly. So as we think about this today, in your office, with the people you interact with online, what does it look like for you to treat them with love and the way you want to be treated? What does it look like for you to suspend the need to be right with someone you disagree with and just love them? Because remember, you can be right and you can be right and you can be right and you can be right, but if you're not tuned in with love, it's coming out all wrong. Now, I'll say this, for someone who is really toxic or for someone who's dangerous in your life, absolutely there are times where you need boundaries and you may have to love them from a distance, and that might be also very difficult. But I will say this is a good starting point. Maybe this is something you can work on, and you can do this from a distance, forgiving them, letting go of what they did, and then, and this is the really hard one, wishing them well. Maybe you need to start with just not wishing that an anvil would drop on their head. Maybe a lighter object, and then the objects get lighter and lighter and lighter. I don't know. Start somewhere, okay? But you can do that. So maybe you just need to pick someone and do that from a distance if it's someone who's like that. But I'll say this, if the only thing that counts is love, what are we doing to show that love to people in our life, even our enemies? Even our enemies. Now, on your way in, you got a blank card. Looks like this. If you open it up, there's nothing inside. This card is for you to put love into action. This is one of the ways that we're encouraging you to actually put love into action in the form of written love. So, and I'm saying there are a lot of things that you could write in a card to someone. Maybe it's an apology. Maybe it's a thank you. Maybe you just need to pick someone and remind them who they're becoming. Remind them of what you see when you see them. And I'll say you never know the impact that your words might have. You know, your words might be coming to this person at a time when they can't see what you see. You know, they might be struggling to figure out who they're becoming, and your words just might shine a little light into their darkness. So think about it, but I don't want you to think about this too long or too hard. Just pick someone you can say something to and then do it. And on your way out, you're going to also get another card today that just has some simple ideas. So if you're wrestling with like, I don't know where to start, that card lists a few action steps that hopefully you can either directly take or that can inspire you, you know, hey, I want to go out and do something for somebody. But what we want you to do is to love somebody, okay? This whole series will be a failure if you don't go out and love people. Now, there's one last person that we need to cover as we talk about love, and that is you. And as it goes, it says to love your neighbor as yourself. But the thing is, and the tricky thing is that to love your neighbor as yourself, you need to know how to love yourself well. Because if you don't know how to love yourself well, you won't know how to love your neighbor well. And this might sound to some of you, this might sound very like kumbaya, like Pollyanna, like sugar-coated stuff. But here's the thing. I have noticed that the people who are harshest with other people, it is almost always because they can't stand something about themselves. Almost every single time. So I really do believe that there are a good amount of people today that you hate what you see in the mirror. And maybe hate is a little bit of too strong of a word, or maybe you just have a hard time accepting or loving what you see in the mirror. And it's like Mr. Rogers said, love is at the root of everything. Love and even the lack of it. So some of us, we are out of tune with love because we don't know how to love ourselves. And so I'll tell you this about me, and I haven't told very many people about this, so I'm going to tell the whole church about it. As you can see, I'm not a really big guy. So if you're listening to this podcast and you can't see me, I just want you to imagine a bendy straw with limbs and weird hair on top. And you've got a pretty good picture. There we go. Now, pretty thin. Now, I feel pretty great about that now, but there was a time in my life, there's a very long time, for a very long time, when I wanted very desperately to be in a different body. When I wanted to look different, I wanted to be different, and I could go into that for a very long time. But the height of all of this, when I was about 15 or 16, and I told my mom that I wanted diagnostics done on my blood because I was convinced that there was something wrong with me. I had worked it in my head that there has to be something wrong with me, and it's got to be something with my metabolism or something like that, and I need to get diagnostics done and find out what it is. And my mom would tell me, no, there's nothing wrong with you. Like, you're just fine. Like, you are this way. That's okay. But I refused to hear her. And now, just for context, both of my parents, who are obviously older than me, they both look still just like this. So this was always in the stars for me. But I wanted my blood tested. I was relentless about this. And so finally my mom caved and she took me to this diagnostics place, and I got there, and they asked me why I'm there. My poor mom has to explain to everybody that I'm convinced that there's something wrong with me, but there's not anything wrong with me, but I want to know anyway. And so they take my blood and they run some tests, and everything in me is hoping that finally I have the answer to my problems. That finally I have the solution for why I hate myself so much. And they called with the results, and it was just like my mom said, nothing wrong. And I've been out of that phase for a while, and I've learned to appreciate what this body can do, namely eat all of the ice cream and cookies that I want and still look like this. Some of you are like, okay, I'm glad that you don't hate yourself anymore, but now I hate you. Fair enough. So I look back and I think about how much pain that I put myself through because of what I believed about myself, how much time and energy I spent convinced that something would, like this other thing would solve my unhappiness with myself. And then I think about my mom. I think about my poor mom and how heartbreaking that it had to be for her to watch her son, who she loved, tie myself into knots, convinced that there is something wrong with me. And the whole time she sees me and she loves me and she's saying, you're okay. Why are you doing this? Like, you're okay. Just stop. So I wonder how heartbreaking it is for God when he sees one of us, when he sees you or me, like stubbornly chasing for a solution to that answer to that question, like, am I loved? Am I accepted? Am I okay? Am I enough? And we're chasing this fix by looking at our job or our coworkers or our bosses or our dates or a bottle or whatever culture is peddling to us at this moment in time. And how heartbreaking it is for God to see us scratching and clawing and tying ourselves into knots while all along that he's been saying to us again and again and again and again, like, you're made in my image, you're loved, you're accepted, you're okay, why are you doing this? But he is immensely patient with us, like my mom was with me. So what in your life are you doing? What are you chasing? What are you striving for? What are you worried about? Because you haven't yet accepted the fact that God already loves you and is calling you to step into who you're becoming, which is love. Some of us, we're always gonna be a little bit off key. We're always gonna be a little bit out of tune because we don't know that we're already loved and accepted and okay. Some of us who are followers of Jesus, we get ourselves in all kinds of weird places. Like, we think that God is disgusted with us or upset with us, or he's just like waiting for us to mess up so that he can come down on us. And I'm telling you, if you ever find yourself confused about God, please remember this, that Jesus is what God is like. If you're wondering what God is like, Jesus is who he's like. And here's the thing, Jesus spent all of his time with the people that we would call the screw-ups. And the craziest thing is, when he was on the cross, like in torment, he looked at his tormentors and he didn't say like, oh, you better wait until I get off the cross. No, he said, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing. He is immensely patient with us. That's what God is like. God is crazy about you, and you can't earn that. Parents, when you looked at your kid for the first time, what did they do to earn your love? Nothing. They existed. Your Heavenly Father loves you. What are you chasing? What are you chasing? You have the love that you've needed all along. We can spend so much of our time struggling to find validation, to build our bank accounts, to do this or to do that, but only one thing matters. And one of my favorite bands, one of my favorite songwriters, John Foreman, he's the lead singer of Switchfoot. He puts it this way, he says, love alone is worth the fight. It's one of my favorite lines. Love alone is worth the fight. Love is at the root of everything, says Mr. Rogers. The only thing that counts is faith expressing itself through love. So, have you tuned yourself to love and to the God who is love? Have you made it the most important thing? And I hope that after this series, that beginning today, the answer can be yes. So let's go become love. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you so much for the love and the patience and the kindness that you have shown to us and that you continue to show to us and that you will always have for us. And God, I pray that today, as we leave this series, as we kind of move forward, God, I pray that you would help us realize that we are becoming love, that that's who you are calling us into. God, I pray that you would just help us, any of us who are struggling with who we were before or who we are now, God, remind us that we are becoming love and help us to step into it. We pray these things in Jesus' name.